everyone, and welcome to another episode of Our Point of View Talk Show. We are so glad that you could join us this evening. So we're going to be talking about the coronavirus and the booster shot. And before we get started, let's go ahead and say hello to everyone. As you can see, we have first with us retired Captain Jackson.
Hey, everybody. Sorry for the impromptu-ness. I just landed in Miami and I just did this for the intro. I'll put my mask back on.
Double mask.
Yeah, he's in a car with a lift. So yeah, double mask. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Jackie.
And our special guest is Dr. Kay Stevens. We always have Dr. Kay Stevens and Nurse Meady Bartonelli out of Washington, D.C. They're our professionals that come on and talk to us. So that way we don't give out any false information. We just only give out the right information. Yes. So good evening, Dr. Kay. How are you?
I'm tired. I'm well. No, I'm doing well. We're still here talking about COVID and vaccinations and all of that good stuff. I was, people thought I was joking when I said, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, this is looking like COVID 2022. And so September is rolling out, October be here, it'll be 2022.
You're right, it'll be the end of the year before you know it. It'll be the end of the year. Yeah, so we are talking about the booster shot. So one thing we do with the, when we talk about the coronavirus, we talk about different things that are coming up. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about the same thing over and over. We try to talk about the different variants that comes out. Now we're talking about the booster shot that supposedly had rolled out on September the 20th. So can you talk to us about the booster shot? Did it actually come out on the 20th? Were all three of the vaccines eligible to start the booster?
So that's kind of tricky. The booster isn't approved for everyone. And so I just want to say that because so many people, as soon as they heard, the FDA was approving a booster for Pfizer, people went out and got boosters. And it wasn't, they had not looked at data. It was just a news announcement, and practitioners, medical professionals, or whoever just gave people a third dose without checking history, without getting any type of final resolution from public health, the public health governing organizations. And so when last Friday happened, FDA looked at the data and they was like, no, they did not approve booster shots, period. And then there was some controversy, and then they went back and voted again and said, okay, we will approve boosters for those who are 65 and older and for those who are immunocompromised, but boosters are not approved for the general public.
Now that's how it was when it started out with the vaccines, right? It wasn't for the general public. It went, different orders. So we're doing the same thing with the
No order. It's just period. They're not approving boosters, period, for the general public.
At all. We won't.
At all.
No boosters will be coming out.
And when we're saying boosters, it's the same vaccine. It's no different formulation. It's just a third dose.
That's what I don't understand. Why is there going to be a booster if you've already had two shots with the Moderna and the Pfizer? You've had two shots. With the Johnson & Johnson, it's just a one shot. But now Johnson & Johnson, are they supposed to be coming out with a second shot, then a booster? Or just
no. The only the only company that submitted a request to do boosters was Pfizer. They're the only ones that have submitted data. So Johnson & Johnson came out later, so they're still collecting data. But they did release a report yesterday saying that if you get 2 doses of Johnson & Johnson, you have 94% efficacy. So it's right up there with the mRNA vaccines. But it's the whole point of Johnson & Johnson is one shot. And it was like The one dose of Johnson and Johnson was like 88 to 90%, just depending on the person, effective.
And now they're saying get two.
No, they're not saying get two. They're just saying they looked at the double booster, like if you get 2 shots, and it did improve your uptake, your immune response, the antibody response. So, I mean, right now it's about economics. Johnson & Johnson knows that if they put out that you can get a second dose, then and they know how some people are, so people will go get a second dose, and that's double money for them when it's not really necessary.
See, a lot of people, they got the Johnson & Johnson so they wouldn't have to get the double dose, so they could get a one and done and be finished.
Yeah. So there's no booster requirement for Johnson & Johnson right now for anybody. So that's what I'm saying. And it's like people just took that FDA announcement and they just applied all. And you can't apply all. So yeah.
So Dr. K, would you say that really wasn't explained as well as it could have, so that people could make an informed decision? At the end of the night, we're talking about decisions that people need to make, should make, with respect to the pandemic. And so, if you don't put out all the accurate information, like you said, this booster, first of all, that information saying that Johnson & Johnson needed to be complete so that people didn't think that they were soliciting an extra booster, or excuse me, an extra shot. Number one. Number two, with the whole booster discussion, to say that and to not put a caveat with that, to say, hey, listen, we're not saying everyone just run out and get the shot, because everyone doesn't do that. Do you think that could have been explained a little bit better so that people have a better understanding of what they needed to do or what they should do?
Yes, it definitely could have been explained better, because just because Pfizer, recommended a booster, there's still regulatory steps that had to be taken before people got them. And so there were facilities, unfortunately, when you have these drive-through vaccination sites, they're not checking anything. They're not checking for your health. They're not checking for anything. And so I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and I got questions about the booster, because some people thought that the booster was a different shot, like it was a different formulation. And it's not. I'm like, you would just essentially be getting a dose of the same vaccine. Like nothing's changed. And I will say that there are people I know that ran out. They're healthy. They're not over 65. They're not immunocompromised, but they heard booster. And because some people still have that fear of, getting COVID, like there's still that underlying fear. Like if I get it, even if, you're vaccinated, because we know that there are breakthrough infections. And so just out of that fear, they went and got a third shot and they didn't need it. And so like Captain Jackson is right. It wasn't explained properly. And the public just went out, people went out, doctors didn't ask questions, doctors didn't do their due diligence. And I think they should be held responsible, because what's happening is COVID is going to become endemic. And by that, I mean, it's going to be here to stay. So just like the flu. One of the reasons why the FDA was like, okay, we're not approving this for the general public because you need to update this vaccine because Delta is running rampant. those, and I did check. So they did approve boosters for the mRNA vaccines, which is both Pfizer and Moderna, even though Moderna had not yet submitted. But I guess, you know, they were like, both mRNAs will do it. So there's that. Like the flu vaccine changes every year. You don't get the same dose of the flu vaccine every year. It changes. So we can't continue to keep giving people the same vaccine year after year, because we're seeing the variants. It's changing. That doesn't make sense. And that's what I was explaining to people. I was like, I understand where the FDA and other regulatory scientists were coming from, because it's like, if we're going to say, okay, we're going to start doing boosters, because at this rate, people will be getting a dose of the same vaccine every 6 months. Does that make sense to y'all? No. So we have to get to a stable version. And we talked about this before on the show. And I was like, the Ebola virus mutated like 92 times before they had a stable version to develop a vaccine. We're still in the early phases of this COVID-19 virus. And so I'll just say that it's not stable. It's not stable enough for a vaccine that where you say, okay, this is it, and you're going to be, you know, done with this formulation. So what these people don't realize is that the mRNA vaccines, they were developed off of the Wuhan strain, which is the first strain out of China. It's no longer in circulation in the population.
The strain is no longer in circulation?
No, not the Wuhan strain, no.
Really? So now we're on,
because Delta is the dominant strain.
Yeah, it's taking over. So now they have to come up with a booster that's going, or a vaccination that's going to
address Delta, Lambda, and Mu.
Wow.
And everything that comes after that. I mean, because it's still new and it's still mutating. Mm-hmm. And so the crazy thing, the Lambda variant was initiated in South America, in Peru. And, you know, there's some speculation. I've been looking at some data that it's not, the vaccines aren't effective against it.
So is this the same like with the flu shot? When you get the flu shot every year, are you getting a different shot, or is it the same shot? Are they, you know, increasing it or
every year? Every year it's a different shot based on the strain from the previous year, and they anticipate some of the genetic changes. So that's why the flu changes every year. So that's why you have to get a flu shot, and it's a different one. They're not giving the same shot year after year. If you ever look at the information sheet that they give you when you get your flu shot, it'll tell you get like a A strain, which is like the last circulating strain, and then they add a B strain, which is like what they think is the current strain, like how the flu mutated. So you're actually getting like two different a vaccine with like two different strains of flu.
Okay. So they're just stopped with the booster altogether? But are they giving that out? Or
oh no, they are giving a booster if you're 65 or older. They're recommending a booster because they saw that there was minimal uptake in that age group. So even though they received like 2 shots, the immune response was lower than the general public.
Okay, so how often are you going to have to get that booster for 65 or older?
Right now, I think if I remember correctly, it's every 7 months, 7 to 8 months, because your immune response decreases over time. So I forgot the percentage, but it was like it decreases X percent over every 2 months. So that's how they came up with like 7 months. And then if you're immunocompromised, you had minimal protection anyway, because most of the medicines that those who are immunocompromised take basically makes the vaccine somewhat ineffective. You have very little antibody response.
So that means no booster for anyone under 65.
No, unless they're immunocompromised.
Now, can you
And that
explain immunocompromised? I'm sorry, Eric. Can you explain that when, are you saying if they have other underlying health issues, then they'll get a booster, but if they don't, they will not?
Right. So, and let me see if I can pull up. So, if you have a weakened immune system, you're immunocompromised. So that's like if you have like HIV/AIDS, if you currently have cancer or you're going through chemo, anything that's gonna give you a weakened immune system. If you're a transplant patient, and then if you're taking like there's like certain drugs that for certain conditions, and that's why I always tell people, you need to talk to your doctor to make sure that you will fall into that category. Don't just go get a shot because, someone said, oh, the boosters are ready. And so, let's see. Yeah, so it's really tricky. And those who are immunocompromised, they already know it. They're going to still wear their masks. They're still taking all those extra precautions. And so they're more at risk. And that's why they're pretty much at the top of the list for the booster, because even when they got, both doses before, their antibody response was still lower than everybody else. So that's one of the reasons why they were on the list for boosters, because they would definitely need, because the vaccines pretty much the efficacy decreases over time, and it wasn't that high for them in the beginning. So they would definitely be like first on the list. And then for those who are 65 and older, they saw that after looking at data that the immune response was lower than other age groups. So that's why they are also in that category for a booster.
Okay. So now the booster is just
It's
a third shot.
Just a third shot. Same thing.
So why is there an issue with whether a booster is needed or not? Because, are they going to add anything different to that shot? Are they going to add anything different? Since it's just a third shot, it's already available. Why will they not just?
Because you don't need it. It doesn't make it won't keep giving someone the same thing, and they already know that it's not effective for the variant that's pretty much in the community. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense, because every 6 months, and vaccines aren't built that way. If you're going to have to give somebody a vaccine every 7 months for something, then you haven't done your job. So now that
for those of us who are fully vaccinated, that's it. You don't need, we're protected forever. Is that basically?
No, you're not protected forever.
For how long?
But the thing is, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know if I can say this, but they are working to update the vaccine. The vaccines need to be updated.
Okay.
To address the current variants in circulation.
Okay.
So if you've been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you're protected against that particular strain of that variant. But you just, I hope I'm not speaking. You just indicated that first variant was based on Wuhan, which is really, I don't want to say null and void, but that's not the main thing that they're dealing with now. So you're vaccinated, but you're not vaccinated against that, Mu, Lambda, and the other one and Delta that you mentioned, correct?
And so that's why people are having breakthrough infections that's severe. But how the immune system works, like once you introduce, like typically So I'll say for the mRNA vaccines are not virus-based. They use mRNA methodology. And so there, so many people have said these aren't even true by the definition of vaccine. The mRNA vaccines aren't vaccines. And there's some truth to that, because typically, like the traditional vaccines, they use a viral vector, not necessarily the virus. Some of the vaccines that we've gotten in the past do have inactivated forms of that virus as carriers to create the immune response. But for these mRNA vaccines, there's no virus. They actually use the fragments of the spike protein of the virus. So when you've seen the pictures of the virus, there's that ball and then there's little spikes coming out. So the spikes coming out of that ball is the spike protein. And that's where the virus attaches to cells to infect it. And that's what they use to introduce the immune response in the body for the mRNA vaccines. So they use fragments of the protein. There's no virus of any sort. However, Johnson & Johnson is a vaccine in the true sense of the definition of a vaccine, because Johnson & Johnson used a non-replicating viral vector of an adenovirus, which is a cold virus that's typically seen in animals. So it has no effect on the human body. So they use that as the carrier to create the immune response.
Okay,
so
great.
that's the difference. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, at this time, we'd like to welcome to the show Miss Connie Abraham. Hi, Connie.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello, great to see you guys again.
Nice to see you.
Well, we're getting our update on the booster, or lack thereof for now.
I missed it.
You missed it. Yeah.
You'll have to update me. I'll have to watch the replay.
Yeah.
So now they're saying that let's go a little bit away from the booster. Now there's more children who are getting sick now.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they gonna do as far as this situation? Are we gonna, start, are all children eligible now for the vaccine? Are they gonna make it for them to be eligible because more children are starting to get sick and end up in the hospital? Are they gonna make it eligible for children now?
So let's talk about FDA approval. So we do know that Pfizer only has received FDA approval for their vaccine, but it's only approved for 16 and older. But the EUA is for 12 and older. So kids 12 to 15 still fall under EUA. The vaccine isn't approved for 12 to 15-year-olds. So just tuck that away. And so then Pfizer announced, was it this week? Last week? I don't know. My days running together, y'all. That they have a vaccine for children that for 5 to 11-year-olds, that they want to submit EUA for, but the clinical trial was only 2,300 kids. I'm going to say that's not enough for me to vaccinate my child. And I'm just going to put that out there. And there has been some criticisms in the epi community and the public health community because, number one, that's a low number for a clinical trial. Mm-hmm. Number two, we're talking about kids who already are getting a few vaccines from the age just for school. So you don't even know long term, what the contraindications will be for all of that. I personally don't feel like they had enough kids enrolled. And I know people are hesitant about enrolling their kids in studies, but 2,300, I said 23,000 They were like, no, it's 20. It was, I had to go back. It was 2,000. And I think 300. And I was just like, that's not enough for children. You know how many kids are in so
Yeah.
the issue is their only thing was like, oh, we didn't see severe, the kids that participated, we didn't see any severe disease. Well, that age group, you're not going to see that anyway. And your numbers were so low that you wouldn't, because it's only Pfizer that's doing this. And so I'm pretty sure they'll fast track it, and then they'll fast track it, and then, you know, everybody that got vaccinated becomes a part of a clinical trial. They following you anyway. And so your child will just become a part of a study. So then they'll have more data.
Now, do we know the age range of the children that are getting sick, that are being hospitalized?
It's the kids, most of them are 12 and under, the one that they're not a vaccine available for. And so I always tell people, because they're like, oh, you know, 60% of the people in hospitals are unvaccinated. I said, so that means 40% are vaccinated. That's, you know, park right there. And then what they're also not saying is that almost half of those hospitalized that are unvaccinated are children, because there's no vaccine for the children. And we automatically go to adults when they say unvaccinated. Mm-hmm. But I know here in the state of Georgia, most of the outbreak cases were found in the schools.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Abraham, you're in education. Do you see that a lot with your schools? Do you see, you know, kids are having to be out of school for a while because they've tested positive?
Well, I won't say that a lot of kids have tested positive, but I do see a lot of parents taking their children to get tests. And I'm getting a lot of those test results in, you know, the letters that they give to the parent when, you know, they go for the testing. Also, there are quite a few children, and I'm at the high school level, who are contracting COVID, be it from somebody else in their household. We just had one family, the whole family, the mom, the dad, the daughter, and I think the daughter's in middle school, and then the son is in high school. So the whole family got it, you know, and we have a process that you have to notify us, you know, Fulton County, and then there's a process that they have to go through in order for them to notify the school, because, you know, it's a private matter. So we're getting, the kids are going home and saying, oh, so-and-so in the class tested positive. And now the parents are frustrated because, well, we didn't get an email. Why weren't we informed? You know, or the other side is I got an email and what are you guys doing about it? You know, so it's just a very hard place to be in, you know, for us as a people, the entire world is just a very difficult place and space. And then you have those parents who are taking advantage of it and saying, well, my child was in the classroom with this kid, so I'm keeping my child home for 10 days, regardless. You understand what I'm saying? And so then you want those absences excused because, and I get it, you're trying to be safe, you know, it's twofold. You're trying to be safe because you don't want to expose your child. You know, you don't want your child to have been exposed, and then you don't want to send him back, turn around and send him right back to school for fear that he did get exposed. So you have to wait and get that child tested. So I see a lot of children getting tested. We've had several cases where there are young people who actually are contracting the virus. I mean, it's just crazy. And to me, it's just like, it's going from age group to age group to age group, because you remember initially it seemed like the elderly community everybody was more elderly, you know, contracting the virus and dying. And then it seemed to have gone to the middle age group, you know, the 30-year-olds, and, you know, it's just crazy. And now we're talking about the 18 and under or 16 and under age group contracting the virus. It's just, and you know how I feel about the whole thing, Jackie. I know I'm not a conspiracy theorist. However, is just a little spooky to me that it just keeps hitting these different age groups at a certain period of time. And I just feel like the media is playing with our emotions. You know what I mean? I think they're playing our emotions. I think they are playing a card game, you know, and I do believe that is politics, you know, but politics have no place, as far as I'm concerned, politics have no place when it comes to our families, our lives. You understand what I'm saying? That shouldn't even play into it. But I do feel like it's playing a large role in this situation.
And so, yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I was on a panel with some people on Sunday, and that was one of the questions that we had from the audience, because they were like, kids are getting sick, and we know that it's because there's no vaccine for them, and they're in the classrooms, and then the parents aren't practicing mask wearing and everything. The kids, a lot of them are asymptomatic, and so we know that kids bring everything home because they touch, they share, they do whatever. And so the question that they asked me was, well, if you know that having kids in person in the classroom is the issue, and every 2 weeks, entire classrooms are having to go home. Some school districts in Georgia have just flat out gone to virtual because they don't even have the teachers or the resources to have the split learning between the virtual and the in-person. And then you have other school districts who are saying, like, we can't even do virtual for, you know, particular grades that have had to be sent home because the kids are genuinely sick. They can't even log on to do work. And the teachers are sick too. And so they were like, so why are we putting our kids through this? And I said, it's politics, because in order to get funding, schools, the U.S. Department of Education requires that kids have to be physically present in the classroom for X number of days in order to get funding. We're already in a pandemic. They make changes to everything else. They do all this other stuff. And then you have people that are saying, well, we know studies show that kids learn best in person or in the classrooms. And I was like, that may be true prior to this pandemic, but when you have a child that you have to say, well, you're not going to school today because somebody in your class was sick, how do you explain that? Or when their teacher dies, or when their classmate dies, that's not better. Right. And you know, this is our point of view. So but that's what I'm saying. And I told them, I said, well, I'm on the medical advisory board for the DeKalb County schools. And so DeKalb County was one of few systems that required masks from day one. Mm-hmm. And I got hate emails and hate whatevers from people because they were like, my child can't smile behind a mask. I was like, I mean,
okay.
I don't understand. And so,
right.
But they, you know, and I tell them, I was like, vaccinations aren't the only mitigation effort. Vaccination is just one part of what we're saying is mitigation for COVID. When we didn't have a vaccine, what did we do? We wore a mask.
We was masked up, and we was taking elderberry and tudeberry and hooterberry and Thinkleberry and everything.
Vitamins, and we social distance, we did hand washing, and so all of that. But now people think that these vaccines are the end all, the cure all, and that's not true.
False sense of security with
it's a false sense of security. And so you got these parents, they're going out, they're not masked. The kids are saying, oh, well, you know, my mommy said I don't have to wear a mask. But I will tell you, just with the mask wearing within DeKalb County for all the students, DeKalb County had the lowest number of cases in the state.
I know we require a mask too. I mean, we probably give out 500 masks a day. You know, we just have them at the front when you come in, you know, where the kids just come and pick one up. Because if they come in, we have them like up in another area where the kids enter. We have our, you know, staff out there handing out masks. So it is mandated that we, as well as the students, have to wear masks in order to enter the building.
Are they doing temperature checks? Are they doing temperature checks?
No, that has not been instituted this year. Nope.
Okay.
No, and the thing with temperature checks is If it's hot outside, you come inside, your temperature is gonna be raised. If you're getting out of an air conditioned car, your temperature is gonna be lowered. Realistically, if you're gonna temperature check, you have to do it once a child has been in the classroom and they're settled and their body temperature has normalized. But when people are like, oh, we're taking your temperature when you enter the building, I'm just like, it's a waste of time.
Or what? Right. So you went out and bought all these electronic
Yeah.
thermometers, you know what I mean? Making one, it's once again, the industry rich. I'm just saying, you know, with these thermometers that every county, all the schools brought them, you had to have so many in the building and scanning. I mean, it's just, it's incredible to me.
Mhm. No, some of the counties are having issues with bus drivers. They don't even have the bus drivers to get the kids to school.
Very true.
They don't have.
That's because well, DeKalb County still has a shortage, and they had a shortage before this. But DeKalb County requires masks on buses, and that was one of the things that we had to fight with too. And I was like, yeah, I want to use the CDC language for everything else, and CDC says whether you're vaccinated or not, if you're in public transportation,
Right.
you have to wear a mask, and a school bus is public transportation, and so your child has to wear a mask. If you don't want your child to wear a mask on a bus, then you drive them.
Yeah.
And so, but because, and they don't understand a bus driver, like, do you know how exposed they are to all these different kids? And they were having to do like different shifts, and that wears you down too. And I know, I can't remember the state, but one state had such a shortage that they had to bring in their National Guard to drive buses.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God. Well, I know they were talking, one of the counties was talking about, they wanted the shields up, the dividers, you know, on the buses, because they didn't have those. That's an extra level of security for them. And, you know, there's been, you know, children who have just been stranded at the bus stop for like 2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 days, the bus drivers haven't been coming. You know, they're just, you know, everybody's scared of the unknown. You know, nobody wants to get sick. You know, they're just afraid of the unknown.
That's very true. But, you know, it takes a collective effort though. And that's like my thing with where we are in this particular space. You know, so much is going on. And I'm like, did we go back in time? Because I'm seeing horses and whips and, you know, people telling you.
Can we not go there?
And so
it's a whole new show. Oh my God.
It's like, so, but what I'm saying is that alone tells you where we are mentality wise in this nation, because I have been on panels with people from globally, from all over, and they're like, Dr. Stevens, what's going on in America? Because we have unvaccinated people, because, you know, they're saying this is the pandemic, it's the unvaccinated something, it's whatever. And I was like, but that's giving the vaccinated people a false sense of security, because they think they can't, and they are getting sick, and they're not wearing masks, and they're not, you know, doing all these other things. And so other countries have unvaccinated. There is no country that's 100% vaccinated.
Right.
Okay. And so, but their hospitals aren't overflowing.
Right.
And that's because they wear masks. It's not political. You know, everybody talking about their rights and like all of that. And I'm like, just wear a mask. You can tell, and even the teachers were saying, kids will wear a mask. They'll do whatever you tell them to do if you give them a reason. And like my friend that's a pre-K teacher, and there's like, you know, Miss So-and-so, why do we have to wear a mask? And she said, so other people don't get sick. And her students are like, oh, okay. They don't fuss with her. They don't fight with her. They're not taking it off, you know, during the classroom. They do, because kids, they're naturally compassionate people. Yeah. But it's the parents that has created like this. My mama said I don't need to wear a mask. Well, you got to wear one here. I'm sorry. But, you know, just to get past that, and I keep saying that, you know, the last administration ushered in a spirit of defiance and disobedience. So no matter what you do and what you say, they're not going to comply. And most people think that it's, was that the unvaccinated people are what's driving the spread of the virus. And it's not true. It's mostly the children, because I always tell people, who was the first group that got like basically quarantined or sent home when the pandemic started last year? It was the children. They closed the schools first before they did everything. And now you've introduced a whole new host for this virus in the children.
Mm.
And that's why we're seeing these changes. And the crazy thing is, I tell people, because I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist by training, I study infectious diseases. A virus doesn't want to kill its host. It wants to survive. So the more you try to kill it, the more it changes to stay alive, which is why we have all these variants.
Mm. And the people said, oh, wow, thank you, doctor.
But that's what but if you aren't, and it goes back, and my whole thing with like the vaccine mandates, I'm like, okay, that's all fine and good, but why do we still have food deserts? Like we can't put a Band-Aid on this by saying forcing someone to get vaccinated when they're still generally unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Like, where is that? Where is the free healthcare? Where, the access to healthcare? Where are those resources? Because that's going to be your best defense against any virus, whether it's COVID or whatever comes after it. You have to have a healthy people, a healthy nation.
So with the vaccine being out, is there less testing being done now? People are getting vaccinated?
And testing is a part of that mitigation. And that's another thing. People aren't being tested. I was just talking a friend of mine who, people are not really being tested because it's that false sense of security. And now we're going into flu season, and they could be necessarily have, a mild form of COVID if they're vaccinated, thinking it's a cold or the flu, and they're passing it to other people.
So even if you are fully vaccinated, you still should continue getting tested.
Yes, if you feel unwell or you have been around someone that's positive.
Because I know
you don't know, though. A lot of times you don't even know that you were around someone for instance, someone who works in my school, like she was down 3 weeks, but she has no idea. Double mask, wore gloves. She has no idea how she contracted. She said, I only went from my house to the grocery store back home. This was at the top of the school year. She said, so if you ask me where I contracted the virus from, I absolutely cannot tell you. I have no idea.
Probably the grocery store or school, because grocery stores stopped cleaning the carts. Remember, they used to wipe down everything. All of that.
Everything stopped.
They're not even contact tracing anymore like they should. As a matter of fact, there's like a list of states that actually cut funding for public health. Like Texas is a state that cut funding for contact tracing because they don't. And I'm like, so I can go somewhere and somebody could have tested positive for COVID and I wouldn't even know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. There's no way to know.
And
unless it's a close friend of ours, or like we said, somebody, a coworker, you know what I mean? Or, you happen to be in a meeting, but you happen to be in a meeting with a group of people and you find out 2 weeks later that the person hasn't come back because they contracted COVID. What? Mm-hmm. It's just, to me, it's very horrible, and I just say, Father God, can you please, I know we all jacked up and messed up, but can you please, and I'm not saying we got to go back to exactly the way things work, but can you please give us some relief so that people.
But mask, just a simple mask, y'all, I don't.
Okay, so because there's always a discussion about this, so the mask, people really believe that the mask is helping.
No, the mask does help. And so I've had to have this conversation because they was like, oh, the virus particles are so small, wearing a mask isn't going to help you. And I was like, but one particle of virus can't infect you anyway. The virus travels in clusters. The mask protects you from viral clusters. Like you can't eat just one grit. You eat grits. And that's how I had to explain it to people, because you know they come for me all the time. And I was like, if that's why they check your viral load. How much virus do you actually have? Because it has to be multiple particles. When you sneeze, it comes out in clusters.
Yeah.
It's not just one. So yeah, theoretically, one particle of a virus, if you have a mask on, it'll go through the mask, but these particles travel in clusters. So, and I was like, and then they just look at me.
So let me ask you this question, because we've been having this discussion with reference to the, you know, when you get vaccinated, you get your card. Is there a database so that they can actually go back in and know who actually got the vaccines? And if I lose my card, is there a way to go and have it, you know, can they reissue it without me having to do anything else?
Yeah, so they put it in the system. They have to, the CDC requires that every dose of the vaccine be tracked. So if you were to go to your doctor, they can look in the system and pull you up. Each state has a record, and they can pull up your information and say, okay, you got this particular vaccine.
Okay.
And now the CDC is also requiring that states allow the public to have electronic access for all vaccines. So, and you know, like when you have to call the health department or call your doctor to try to get a record. So now they're mandating that I should be able to log into a system on my phone or some electronic device and be able to pull up my, you know, my records to be able to.
But nobody else would be able to see that, right?
No, nobody else would see it. It's like if you would log into the bank, look at your bank account, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about so like the county where I work, they've done massive vaccination drives. So, and they, you know, they send us a questionnaire. Have you had your vaccinated? You know what I mean? They kind of do it in a roundabout way, but it's basically, did you get vaccinated or not? Yes or no. Not that we're saying anything's going to happen to you or your job, but
yeah,
please answer the questionnaire. And so they're getting ready. They did that a few months ago, maybe at the top of school year. They're getting ready to do another huge drive for it again as well. So my question is, when they do that, does the county where I work, do they have access to go in and see who's been vaccinated and who's not been vaccinated?
Are you giving like your personal name, or are they giving you like a number? Are you like, what are they asking for? Like, what
I think you go under your employee ID number.
Oh yeah, they can pull that up.
But are they allowed? I mean, why would they have to do that? Why would they need to go back and check and see if a person got vaccinated? Isn't that their personal business?
No, not when it comes to employers, because now by especially
mandatory, unless it's mandatory that you are fully vaccinated where you work, then you know they don't have a right to know whether you're vaccinated or not.
Your employer does have a right to know.
They do?
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And they can make it so that you have to be vaccinated?
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they can. And that's also a federal mandate. So if a company has 100 or more employees, they have to require that the employees be vaccinated, or they have to submit to regular testing.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
or they would have to submit to regular
But
testing.
if you work for the federal government, you don't have the option of testing. You have
Right.
to be vaccinated.
My
Or
friend who,
federal
I have
contract.
a friend who was adamant about not getting tested. I mean, from day one, she worked for the government.
Yeah.
She had to. She was
Yeah.
hyper fire hot mad, but I need my job. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I have a family. You know, we have to, you know, I help my husband with the needs of the house. I have to do it. I'm left no option, you know, and it's unfortunate because I really think that that's an invasion on someone else's privacy. I really do, to make me have to do something so that I work for you. That don't sound spooky to y'all? That don't sound weird?
Oh, it sounds weird to me. Like and as an epidemiologist, and I know that vaccines are helpful, but I really don't feel like anybody should be forced.
Right.
I mean, and that's my opinion, that I'm not representing anybody but myself, you know, on this show.
Right.
That's just
Our point of view.
It's our point of view. But I liken it to like even just abortion. You telling me it's just like, what can I?
Yep.
I'm just like, we have entered into a slippery slope with control of what I do with my body.
Oh.
And for me, that's just a bite, like with anything. And so whether or not I believe it works, I should still be able to have a choice of whether or not I want it.
Come on, preacher. Preach to the people. Yeah.
I don't believe in mandating anything for anybody that has to deal with their personal bodies. And I'll just say that. Like, and even like with talking to people who are unvaccinated. And so they'll reach out to me and they were like, well, I just don't feel like I should be, like, my spirit isn't telling me to do it. And I said, well, listen to your body, because you could be one of those people that have something. You know, I'm like, but once you make up in your mind and you are resolute about being vaccinated, then do that. I'm not going to demean you. I'm not going to like people out here calling folks stupid. And I was just like, but you don't know what's going on in my body.
Right.
Now that's
where we cross the line, you know, when we start saying, oh, that don't make no sense. You need to be led by the Spirit of God. God ain't in that. And when they start doing all that, you done lost me. I'm done, because let's not try to tie it into God and spirituality and he anointed the people to bring the vaccine and all that. That's your opinion. That's how you feel.
Right.
Okay.
Now
but
there's one company
or condemn me because I don't feel that way. You understand what I'm saying? I just think that it should be left up to the individual and it should be personal.
Right. There's one company that I heard about on the news that if their employees are not fully vaccinated, then they have to pay an additional $200 a month for insurance.
I did hear that.
Yeah. If they're
and they
not
had like 2,000 or more people to get of the unvaccinated. I think they were saying like somewhere between 50 and 80% of their unvaccinated employees got vaccinated because they were going to surcharge them $200 a month.
I heard that. That's terrible.
Oh. That's
Population control, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's my point of view.
That's scary. That's scary. But that's what's going on. That's That's why we continue to have our updates on the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Because there's some people out there, they're like, coronavirus again. I'm sick and tired of hearing about this. I don't want to hear about it no more. You know, this, that, and the other. But we need to get educated from it. That's why we have Dr. K and Nurse Meaty come on and talk to us about it, because we have questions that need to be answered. You know, instead of us just sitting here talking to each other back and forth, you know, we may be passing on the wrong information, and we don't want to do that. We want to pass the correct information on, and we want people to have an opportunity to ask questions on, you know, about the coronavirus.
Jacqueline.
So the FDA today granted EUA for the third booster shot because, you know, the initial submission was only for 2 shots. So it's only for Pfizer. So the booster is only for Pfizer. So the EUA is for a booster dose of Pfizer in people 65 and older, people at high risk of severe disease, and people whose jobs put them at risk of infection. So they were like, they amended the EUA to allow for a booster in certain populations such as healthcare workers, teachers, daycare staff, grocery workers, and those in homeless shelters or prisons.
Now, I know we're going to have to get ready to go, but I have a question for you, Dr. K.
Okay.
If you had the Pfizer, no, if you had the Moderna shot, can you take the Pfizer booster?
I would not.
Mm.
It hasn't been approved for across. And there are doctors out there who are giving people whatever. My friend went to the doctor and just for like, regular checkup. And she said the doctor pulled up, in the system, like, oh, I see you've had 3 like vaccine doses. She's like, no, I've only had 1. I got Johnson & Johnson. And so she was like, oh, well, I'll take these others out of the system. It must have been, like an error. So then she's like, well, Johnson & Johnson isn't effective. And so I just want to go ahead and give you a shot of Pfizer. And so she was like, and what makes you, like, who told you to do this? Like, where's the evidence? Where's the research? And she was like, well, some people have just been. And she was like, no, thank you. And I thought I would have reported her, because she was like, I've given plenty of people who got Johnson, but I said, Johnson & Johnson is just as effective.
The one shot.
The one shot. And it doesn't say anything about mixing it with the mRNA vaccine, but that was her own personal stuff. And that is the problem. And I won't get on my soapbox because but these medical professionals aren't doing their due diligence, and they're just doing whatever they hear.
Yeah, it's very scary. It is very, very scary out here.
And they're doing things not based on FDA, CDC, or any type of science. It's like what they've heard. And she was like, I wanted to call you so bad, and whatever, so you could tell the people.
Get you on the phone right now. Listen, talk to my girl right now.
I wish you had, because I would have told her, I'm reporting you, and your license is gonna get suspended.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. K, thank you so very much for taking the time to come out and talk to us about the coronavirus update. We really appreciate it. But next week, we're going to be talking about life coaches. We need a life coach, and Ms. Connie's going to talk to us about it. So be here next week for that show. Just remember, guys, everything you've heard and everything we said is our point of view.
Our point of view.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Dr. K.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. K.